This Raw Confessional is probably like the second part of the original, entitled My Falling Away. I kind of want to go a little bit deeper and a little bit further into um, that time where I was falling away from the Lord. And if you listen to the prior message, you'll remember that I said that it was because of anger and bitterness and resentment and hatred towards Christendom and those in it because of their rejection of me and the faith walk that I chose. Because it was unorthodox, they didn't understand it, they were making false assumptions about what I believed and practiced, and I said, fine, if you're not going to give me the time of day or listen to me and make all these false assumptions, then forget you guys. And because of that bitterness and anger that I had, I said this before too, I threw the baby out with the bathwater, and I just painted Christendom with one broad stroke and saying, you guys are idiots, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I was pretty much born in church. I was saved when I was 6, and I spent every Sunday and every Wednesday night in church, and I've heard all the sermons that I can hear. I've heard the Bible preached cover to cover. I've heard everything that Christianity and Christendom has to say. I've heard it all. I can't learn anything new. Right there. There's the key. That bitterness and that hatred led to pride. That pride told me I know more than they do, because I had this special revelation regarding the permanence of God's instructions, how the Torah is still applicable to the life of believers today. And because I learned some things that the majority of Christendom missed, because I dug into and learned about the Hebraic roots of the faith and the culture and custom of the first century believers and how it affected them and how they lived. And you won't hear any of this preached in Protestant Christian churches. So therefore, I became prideful, and I assumed I knew more than they did. And I also made the false assumption I can't learn anything from them, so I'm not going to sit under their teachings anymore. I'm not going to give them the time of day anymore, because it's blah, blah, blah. I know this, I know that, I've heard it before. But you know what? I was wrong, because it was the anger and the bitterness and the pride speaking. You know what? You can learn from anybody. You can learn from anything, even if you've heard the subject matter before. If you have an open heart and an open mind, you can still learn something. You can learn something new by seeing it from a different perspective or a different angle, or digging deeper into a surface matter which you already know like the back of your hand. Because my spirit was closed and my mind was closed and my heart was closed, in essence, in one way I was right. I couldn't learn anything from them because I caused myself not to learn anything from them again. So I was closed-minded and closed-hearted. I was foolish. I was angry. I was bitter. I was prideful. And this was a part of my falling away. And this caused me to turn and run into the arms of Orthodox Judaism and their teachings, and to begin to entertain the anti-divinity of Messiah, the anti-Christian message that is in some parts of Orthodox Judaism that are structured and designed as anti-missionary tactics and apologetics that's designed to tear down the arguments of Christianity. And when I dove deeper, later on, when I dove deeper into these anti-missionary Orthodox Jewish apologetics against Christianity, I realized that in their arguments, they weren't giving the whole quote or telling the whole truth or telling the full scope or the story of it. They were just focusing on one thing that helped their argument. So a lot of their arguments sound good on the surface, but they're really strawmen. Not only did my anger and my bitterness and pride cause me to run into Orthodox teachings where at one point I was committing the sin of the Pharisees. I was, putting the customs and traditions associated with some of the commandments of Torah on the same level of Torah itself, and I made these obligatory to myself, therefore made myself more burdened and more miserable by the extra things that I had to do that technically weren't even commanded in Scripture. And this also caused me to run into the arms of Jewish mysticism, seeking more of a titillating supernatural experience from Orthodox Judaism itself. And at the root of it, I'm not saying that, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying that all of Jewish mysticism is crap. There are some truths, but you have to dig because they are multiple layers of crap on top of it. So a lot of the, basically Jewish mysticism in Orthodox Judaism, you're not permitted to even touch it or discuss it until you're 40. And this is assuming that you were raised in Orthodox Judaism. So by 40, you would have went through the Torah, the Tanakh, the Talmud, the Mishnah, all these other things, and your mind would be ready and prepared for it. They even give a warning saying that, basically, I think 1 out of 4 people will study Kabbalah successfully because, one will go insane, one will become a heretic, and one will fall away or something of that nature, because they're even saying itself that it's easily misunderstood and dangerous. So I just don't even bother with it anymore because I don't need it. Because all I have is in the 66 books of canon. That's all I need. But anyway, that anger, that bitterness, that pride drove me, because I don't even really know how to say this, because I did have a personal relationship with Yeshua, but it was cold. It was kind of put on the back burner. Yeshua wasn't of highest priority and importance anymore. He was just kind of a side thing, and therefore I didn't experience those supernatural intimate moments with God through Yeshua because I kind of pushed him to the side, and therefore I was seeking that intimacy with God through other avenues such as Jewish mysticism. So there may be some of you out there that are in my shoe, or that were in my shoes, and that were in my position, or maybe your mind and your spirit is heading towards that direction where you've been given the left foot of fellowship. You're angry, you're bitter, and you're ready to write everybody off because they misunderstood you. They gossiped about you, slandered you, made fun of you, took what you believe and feel and live out of context. And you're just ready to kick it all to the curb. Don't do that, because you can't paint everybody and everything with one broad stroke. Not everybody in Christendom is like that. They may not agree with you, they may not understand you, but it was because of my daughter and her recommendation of a church that she thought that me and my wife would like, where we got back into church after almost 20 years. And we found that they welcomed us with open arms. And yeah, they didn't totally agree with everything, but they were patient with us and at least heard us out whenever we were asked about what we believe on particular subjects and everything. But we found great friends and great fellowship there, and I began a healing process, getting rid of my bitterness, my anger, and my pride. And as a result of that healing and coming back into balance and back in a right relationship with God through correctly prioritizing where Messiah Yeshua fits into my life and his word, now, years later, I have one of the greatest opportunities of ministering in a local Baptist church where, I'm able to explain the Hebraic roots of the faith, to express the Jewishness of Jesus, to make those connections that Gentiles often miss because they weren't raised in Judaism and they don't know the customs and traditions of the Jewish people and the Hebraic scriptures, and making those connections, connecting those dots, and seeing the light bulbs go off. It's such a beautiful and amazing thing. And I would have totally missed that if I persisted in my hatred and my anger and my bitterness, and my pride. Like I said in the first the first edition of this, my falling away part 1, I was on a course to hit the rocks. I was on a course to shipwreck my faith, because I was beginning to entertain the idea of denying the divinity of Messiah Yeshua, which would have been the nail in my coffin, because I was so disillusioned with Christianity and Christendom and Christians, and was therefore running headlong into the arms of non-believing Orthodox Judaism and mysticism, that I was on the course to shipwreck my faith. I found out there's something more blinding than a lie. There's something more blinding and deceptive than a lie, and that's bitterness. Bitterness will blind you. It's the yeast and the leaven that will puff you up and give you a big head and make you puff out your chest, and it'll make you give your finger to the world. And when you're closed-minded and closed-hearted, you can't learn anything. You can't see anything. You're just obsessed and focused on one thing, and that is your hatred and your bitterness. And the scriptures tell us, don't let the root of bitterness in your life take hold. That will be your destruction and undoing. That was Hillel, the archangel, which most people know as Lucifer. That was his downfall, was allowing bitterness, which caused pride, to come into his heart. And we all know how that story went. The way to stay on track when you were being persecuted, when you were being slandered, when you were being misunderstood, when you're being shunned and excommunicated, is love and forgiveness. Love and forgiveness will keep you in balance, will keep you on the right track. Love and forgiveness, that's the key. If I would have kept love and forgiveness in my heart, I would have stayed balanced, and I would have, in the Orthodox Jewish commentaries and literature and teachings that I was exploring, I would have been able to see in a balanced way, and would be able to sift through it in a wise and discerning way through the scriptures itself, and realize, okay, this is custom and tradition. Okay, this is anti-missionary propaganda. Okay, this is great. I've never knew this before. This is historical. This is biblical. This is factual. Okay, I'm going to keep that. It's like eating a fish dinner. You just eat the meat and spit out the bones. You got to be cautious when you're eating fish, because there's teeny tiny bones, and you've got to kind of be vigilant on that. If not, you're going to swallow a bone and choke and possibly die. That's the way it is spiritually. It's okay to explore, read other, literature, other religious literature, to get a different point of view or a different perspective, because indeed the Jewish people and the Jewish religion have much to say, and we have much to learn from their commentaries on the scripture. But again, it's like eating fish. You eat the meat and spit out the bones. And when you have love and forgiveness in your heart, you can, and you use the scriptures, sola scriptura, the scriptures itself, as a filter. You can filter out what is propaganda, what is just religion, what is just culture, custom, and tradition, and then you can keep whatever's pure, whatever's left behind, that is good, that is scriptural, that is historical, that is linguistic, that is factual. And therefore you can increase your learning that way. My mistake was thinking that, the rabbis, hey, they've been studying this book for thousands of years, more than Christianity, and, they know more. But my mistake is they don't know more. They may know more in certain areas and arenas and aspects of the Old Testament of the Tanakh, but there's a lot they don't know that Christendom does know, simply because they, by and large, have rejected Messiah Yeshua and have not allowed that revelation to penetrate their interpretation and their rendering and their understanding of the scriptures as a whole. So that was one of my mistakes. I'm like, okay, these Christians, on the timeline and scale, they're infantile in their learning. Therefore, I'm gonna, stick with the Orthodox. But it was foolish, because Christendom, because they've accepted the Messiah, they're open to new revelation regarding the Tanakh, the Old Testament, and they can understand it in a way that the Orthodox can't. So you gotta, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater with either of them. You've got to take both Christian teaching and Jewish teaching, filter it through the scripture, toss out the filters of denominations, of Baptist, of Lutheran, of even Messianic, whatever, and filter it through the scripture. What the scriptures are final authority. What does the scripture say on the matter? And then you make your final, conclusion on whatever subject matter on the scriptures and scripture alone, even if it flies in the face of Christian doctrine or Christian denominationalism. As long as it's pure, as long as it's scripture, that's been me all along. Since I came back from almost shipwrecking my faith, I'm like, look, I'm just going to stick with the scripture, sola scriptura. What does the scripture say? Let the scripture interpret itself. Let the scripture back up itself. What does the scripture say? How do I filter this teaching and this denominational aspect and view of whatever? Kind of went off on a few rabbit trails in this Raw Confessional, but nonetheless, I do pray that what I've said helps you, and helps somebody that may be in a situation that I am. I would encourage you to go to my Ray Bash's Ramblings and find Model Moron. Yeah, Model Moron is an acronym. If you find that teaching, Model Moron, it will show you somebody's journey from Christianity to Torah obedience, and the dangers and the pitfalls that you will encounter through the different levels and steps that someone naturally goes through in their process of coming from traditional Christianity to sola scriptura, Torah obedience. So I think that coupling these two videos with the Model Moron video will really help you if you are in that situation, in the situation that I was. Angry, bitter, prideful, getting ready to shipwreck your faith. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. Love you guys. Shalom, Shavua Tov. God bless.
Abraham'sDescendants.com, getting back to the first century in a 21st century way.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to press the like button as well as the subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and the notification bell that'll let you know every time I make a new video. And don't forget to share this with a friend. Also, visit our website at Abraham'sDescendants.com. Thanks. Shalom. Thanks for watching. Stay connected by subscribing to our other social media accounts and visiting our website at Abraham'sDescendants.com.